our informational evening on vaping. So it should be a lot of good information, and hopefully everyone has had a chance to look at the vapes that were on the back tables. The clips that we were running were current medical information. If you, one was a little loud, but if you could kind of get an idea, it was just talking about the dangers of vaping. The one showed the lungs and damage to that, and then also a parent. So my name is Linda Tennant, and I'm the nursing coordinator for Penridge. Joe Werner is our district social worker, and Callie Cooper, who is our PR and communication, tried to put together an informational evening. So hopefully it'll be, everyone will learn a lot of things about vaping, dangers. And we have Joe Gallo, who is our Director of Security for Penridge School District. He's going to talk for a few minutes. Part of the vapes that we have back there are ones confiscated from our high school. So I'm going to turn that over to Joe, and then we'll move on with our keynote speaker, David Gallo.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming out tonight, and I see a lot of teachers here. The parents, who may be teachers as well, but just the parents alone could just raise their hands and give an idea how many parents are out here. All right, good. So when I was preparing to speak tonight, I was trying to put myself in your position as a parent and asking yourself, is my child vaping? Some of the things, that obvious things you may do is like everything else. You think it's time to your child is smoking cigarettes, doing drugs, you're going to start looking around, looking in the room, their school bag, and things like that. And from my brief experience so far that I've been here at the school, one of the things I always do is when we do find a student that has a vape on, I might talk to them a little bit. I'll ask them when they started vaping, where they got the vape from, do their parents know about it. And believe it or not, some parents do know their children have vapes, and because they're bought legally by people of age in stores, sometimes they don't realize the dangers of it. But one thing that jumped out at me that I know as a parent of a teenager that I would probably slip up on is that a lot of kids that vape do not actually own a vape or even ever possess a vape. So you may suspect, they come home smelling like some of these flavors that you see back there, vanilla, cherry, so forth, that they may be vaping. Obviously they're going to tell you no. And then you go through their school bag and everything else and come up with nothing. And then be reassured that maybe they're not. But the fact is a lot of kids share vapes. And in almost every occurrence that we walked in and found kids vaping in the restroom or a portion of school or outside school, it was a group. And there generally is one vape for 2, 3, 4 kids. So dig a little deeper if you don't come up with anything and speak to them a little further about it. And one thing I wanted to do, and I wanted to do this right off the bat before I forget, I almost did this. You guys could take my email, and it's jgallo, J-G-A-L-L-O, Gallo, at penridge.org. So if in your search to find out if your child is vaping, you have a question, you want to send me some information, ask me information, feel free to use that email. And if not, you can always call the school and ask to be transferred to security office. We're in and out of York a lot, so don't be afraid to use the email. And I would definitely give you a call back, if not that day, the following day. If I mentioned that we're recovering vapes from kids, and some of them are up there behind you. Year to date, the school year to date, we average about 1 per week. So we have 9 confiscations so far this year, which really doesn't seem like a lot depending on who you ask, but I gotta be honest, and I know we're really just scratching the surface of the amount of kids that are vaping. Normally you would say, all right, 8, that's not too bad, you got over 2,000 kids. As you can see, they're easily concealed, and they're sharing. So like I said, those 9 vapes may be used by 40 to 50 kids, depending on how often they're sharing. So for the teachers out here, I noticed there were a lot of teachers, which I didn't expect, but I just wanted to thank a lot of the teachers that came to us with information about kids that may be vaping. We had a teacher that came in today and mentioned that there was a lot of excessive bathroom visits by certain kids, certain groups of kids. Beyond, be aware of that, because like I said, they're sharing it, and although generally they're not allowed to go to the bathroom in groups, they'll go one after another. If you notice it's the same 2, 3 kids going consecutively, there's a good chance you're leaving the vape behind, maybe in the bathroom and sharing it. The last guy brings it back. So it's tough with the bathrooms. I obviously no cameras in the bathrooms, and we don't have enough staff to have one in every bathroom all day long. But if things like that, if you can pick up on that and just relay it to myself or Mr. Branch, Mr. Clark, or Mr. Caselli that's back there, we'd appreciate it, and then we can start monitoring that and work on it. Other than that, I'll be around for a little bit if anybody has a question. My email again is jgallo, J-G-A-L-L-O, @henry.com. Thank you.
Just real quick, so we want to make sure that we know we have Officer Alcott from Penridge Regional. He's going to hang around when we have questions at the end. So if you have any questions from a community point of view, you can certainly ask them to the officer.
Okay, so moving along, we have David Fialco, who is a specialist, addiction specialist. He's going to tell us a little bit more about himself. But I also just want to let you know that David has sent his PowerPoint that he's using, and I know we had so many copies out there, which is awesome. I think I made 100, and 100 of them are gone, so that's like really a great thing. But I'm going to email that to everyone. You will have that. I'll send that out to all the staff. And then also, we're going to be putting this presentation that's being videotaped, and that is also going to go on our district website, along with David's PowerPoint. So any community members who attended on or other teachers who were not able to be here, everyone will be able to access that information. So, all right, thank you for coming out, and
Thank you. All right, evening everybody. I am what's called certified tobacco treatment specialist, so I traditionally help people quit smoking. And when somebody comes in and asks for help, usually it's motivated. There's levels of change in any type of addiction treatment. So you have something called pre-contemplation, where you don't perceive a problem. You have contemplation, where you might think there might be something, wrong with the behavior that you're engaging in. And then there's planning, where you say, all right, I'm going to make a doctor's appointment 2 months from now. And then there's actually that action and engagement level. Most smokers, when they are, how would you say, entering or considering treatment, they're either in pre-contemplation or contemplation. And when somebody comes into my organization and asks for assistance in quitting smoking, usually what they're saying is, I need to quit. Very rarely do I hear, I want to quit. Because wanting and needing are two different things. Usually somebody is presented because their employer is implementing a work-free, a smoke-free, tobacco-free workplace, or their doctors tell them they have to, or their spouse is making them seek an alternative to smoking. And so when we really look at, what is the trigger? Why do people need to? And so one of the things I do is when I assess the dependency level, and I ask them some questions. One being, how long is it from the moment you wake up in the morning till your first use of a nicotine product, regardless of whether that's a cigarette or a vape device or smokeless tobacco. And that usually gives a gauge of the severity of the dependence. And then I ask, what do you like about smoking or using nicotine? Because that's really important. Because there is a profound effect from nicotine use. And most people who use nicotine look at it as a benefit. They look at it as a desirable effect of using nicotine. So it's really important to understand that this is not deviant behavior. This isn't like they're doing it just to mess with you. They're doing it because there is actually a profound effect that is caused by the use of a nicotine product. And so that's what I'm going to be referring to really throughout this presentation is nicotine, regardless of the form of smoking or vaping. And yes, we now have people trying to quit vaping. And some of those people, or a large portion of it, especially the younger age vapers, have never smoked. These were devices that were originally designed in around 2000 to 2008 were the early experimentations with them. And they really hit the market, penetrated the market here in America around 2008. They were originally designed as a cessation aid, something to assist people to quit smoking. Unfortunately, they've been marketed and profited by introducing an entire young generation to nicotine for the first time, because young people know that smoking is harmful. and they know all about it. What they don't know are the harms associated with nicotine. And so when we look at reasons why smokers smoke, 80% of smokers do it primarily to self-medicate emotional problems. They're using cigarettes as a form of antidepressant or tranquilizer, or a drug of solace for negative emotions. When I ask a smoker, or a vapor or nicotine user, why do you use nicotine? What's the number one answer you think you hear? It helps with stress. It does. It's a very effective drug in improving your mood. All right, I'll get to that. 3/4 of the people with a history of depression become depressed after quitting, compared with 30% of people with no such history. So even if you don't have any prior mental health disorder or any type of mental health symptoms, if you begin using nicotine and you use it for an extended period of time and gain a dependency on it and then quit, you have a 30% likelihood of experiencing depressive symptoms. And these can either be acutely or turn into something more long-term. Months or years after giving up, we still crave nicotine because, as with antidepressants such as Prozac or Valium, it improves our mood. It's difficult to give up something that you know is going to help you feel better, especially when that something requires no skill and no effort. And that's the trick, because this other one here has a profound beneficial effect on emotional state of people who need that kind of help. Nicotine also improves concentration and performance on tasks of these demands, because it's also a stimulant. So it not only improves your mood, but it also improves your focus. So it wasn't long ago that, if we think back to the 70s and 80s, in cubicle space, you'd have cubicle workers working on a second or third story of the building, no windows, cubicle walls all around you. You have ashtrays available on the desks if you wanted to smoke. And if you wanted to smoke, you could smoke in your office. So here's this nicotine user in the 80s in an office space, tapping away, using nicotine. Think of the environment. It's not very uplifting. It's kind of depressing. It's stale air. There's not a lot of natural light. You have deadlines. You're under pressure to perform. Now, the smoker has a substance, nicotine, which improves focus and improves mood every time they use it. So now this cubicle worker is actually productive. This cubicle worker is actually focused. Improved mood, focus. Smokers were actually more productive than non-smokers before Clean Indoor Air Act. Because if you could smoke in the environment, the non-smoker next to them were experiencing not pleasant mood because A, they were under a deadline. They didn't have access to dopamine really while sitting at their desk in an office that had no natural light and stale air and deadline and no free time. And they were having a hard time focusing compared to the person who was using a stimulant drug. But once Clean Indoor Air Act occurred, all of a sudden the smokers became a liability, because now that smoker had to go down 2 or 3 flights of stairs outside, smoke their drug of choice, nicotine, gain the stimulant effect, gain the improved mood, come back upstairs, enter the office again, and be productive for about 10 to 15 minutes, but then the nicotine wears off, and that person goes into crave mode. And now, that smoker finds it more difficult to focus than the non-smoker. They're actually less happy than the non-smoker. And so then smokers became a liability to employers. Once you remove this drug from the person, they experience withdrawal within 2 hours. They experience cravings within 15 to 20 minutes, which can impact their mood and their ability to focus. That is why it's highly addictive. That is why some people are saying, well, it's more addictive than opiates. It's more addictive than a lot of other drugs because we have such a low perceived level of harm about it, and because of the way that it impacts our ability to focus on our mood. It does it on a very low, kind of under the radar way. You're not going to get high in couch lock like as if you were to smoke some high-grade marijuana. You're not going to, get a stimulant effect like cocaine. It's just enough to give you a little boost above baseline. Dopamine is the happy drug that we all know. I think everybody here has heard of dopamine in some shape or form. And dopamine is what improves our mood. And that is what is solicited when you expose your brain to nicotine. Now, dopamine is produced naturally in our own bodies every day, every hour, every week, every month of our lives. It's what we chase. We are all drug-seeking individuals. Each and every one of us chase a drug called dopamine, but how we chase it is we put forth skill and effort into things that we do, that we have interest in, hobbies, sports, art, culture, relationships, and we get a little bit of dopamine in return. And it's a very small dose, very minuscule, and it lasts a very short time. Dopamine naturally is given to you. It's a very small dose and it lasts a very short time. And when we look at things like conversation or telling a joke, a conversation between two friends, why do you engage in conversation with people? Why do you have friends? Because they improve your mood, because it's meaningful, because it makes you feel good. The friends we have, we surround ourselves with because we enjoy that. That takes skill and effort to find somebody to form a friendship or a relationship or even a conversation. And when you engage in that conversation, it's a 5% increase from baseline of dopamine. But it's only there for a few seconds, a minute, and then it's gone. And then you're like, brain, hook me up with some more of that. That felt great. The brain's like, no, nothing's for free. You have to do that again. Just don't do it again. Do it better. And so you re-engage in that conversation to seek out that 5% increase in dopamine, and you build bonds and trusts and friendships and relationships. If there's no dopamine, you no longer continue to engage in that conversation and move on with somebody else and find somebody who does provide you with dopamine. Art, culture, drawing, painting, music, theater, about a 15% increase in dopamine, 3 times the reward of a conversation. But it's, again, very brief, very small dose. It's there, it's gone. Brain, hook me up. Oh, yeah, I gotta do that again. Engage in drug-seeking behaviors. But that's great because these are pro-social, healthy drug-seeking behaviors. These are ones that result in recognition, and pride, and integrity. These are things that you will never regret. Youth are supposed to be experimental. They're supposed to be experimenting with all kinds of people and things and hobbies and interests in order to find out which one makes them feel good. The only problem is they should be pro-social and healthy environmental experiments. Unfortunately, in this day and age, we have high access, very easy access, a very high potency of drugs that we have access to, and we have very low perceived level of harms regarding these substances. So unfortunately, sometimes youth experiment with antisocial things. Next up is sports, physical activity, about a 25% increase in dopamine. And that's realistically as good as it gets on any given day. We live in 5 to 25%. Again, very short acting, it's there, it's gone, brain, hook me up, nope, you gotta work for it. And you re-engage. For any athletes in here who play a sport, whether it's field hockey or volleyball or baseball or football, the reason why when you're playing that sport or you're engaged in that activity or you're in the gym first thing in the morning at 5 a.m., you're not thinking about anything else other than the activity that you're doing because you have the blinders on and you're waiting for your dose of dopamine. And when you get it, it's gone and then you want it again. That's why when you make a basket in basketball, it's not like you're, first back, you're, oh, that's it, I got my dopamine, I'm good. I'm gonna go sit down now. No, because it only lasts a few seconds, it doesn't last a long time. And so you get back in that game and you chase that drug. That's how dopamine works. That is not how nicotine works. Nicotine requires no skill, no effort, anybody can do it. All it takes is inhalation. Within 15 seconds, nicotine travels to the brain. It stimulates several regions of the brain, but primarily the limbic system, nucleus accumbens to be precise, and it stimulates a release of dopamine, similar to that of somewhere between art and culture and sports. And it doesn't last just a few seconds. It lasts anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. At the same time, it releases norepinephrine, cortisol. It stimulates your central nervous system, not only physically, but mentally, so you improve your focus for about 10 to 15 minutes at a time. So now you feel less stressed and improved focus from a drug that has a low perceivable harm. Sounds perfect. Except that that stimulant effect not only stimulates the brain, it stimulates your cardiovascular system, increases blood pressure, increases heart rate, constricts the arteries, blood vessels, your vasal system, strips away protective coating on the arterial walls of your arteries, a protein that lines it, that protects against adhesion of things like LDLs. At the same time, nicotine releases stored fats into the bloodstream, which then adhere to the unprotected arterial walls. And this goes on every time you dose off of nicotine. Most people think that smokers die from cancer. Yes, a lot of individuals who use a tobacco product will die from cancer. Majority of smokers die from cardiovascular disease, which is caused by a combination of not only the carbon monoxide in the smoke and some other agents in that smoke which you inhale in smoking, but nicotine exposure is one of the primary constituents behind coronary heart disease. And nicotine are in vape devices. And the rate at which youth are using these vape devices, unfortunately, are exceeding previous generations of nicotine use. When I was in high school in the 80s, we had smoking sections. You could go out into the smoking section and smoke with your teachers. Why? Because we had a low perceived level of harm. Some of you are laughing, some of you might remember this. I didn't know anybody, student-wise, who smoked more than a half a pack of cigarettes a day, really. For most, it was kind of a social thing where you smoked a couple a day. Unfortunately, many of those social smokers ended up with a dependency, and they continue to increase the use of cigarettes slowly. What we're seeing now are young people, because they are being told that vaping is the healthy alternative to smoking, they are not limiting themselves like they would with cigarettes. Cigarettes they know about. They know they're unhealthy. Most would not start with a cigarette. Most young people are starting with vaping, and they have a low perceived level of harm because they're being told the healthy alternative to smoking. If it's healthy, wow, think about the adolescent brain. It's very malleable, learning 3.5-pound organ that's figuring out what makes them feel good. And all of a sudden they discover something that requires no skill and no effort. It helps them when they experience social anxiety, stress related to the environments in which they interact with from day to day. All of a sudden they discover a substance which helps with stress and improves focus. And they're being told it's harmless. Are they going to limit their use? They can do it in class, they can do it in the hallways, they can do it wherever. It really is. There's something called micro-hitting or zeroing, where if this was a vape device, I could just go, take a small dose, and I don't even need to exhale. I just swallow it. Because it's not vapor, it's aerosol. I'll get to that in a minute. So now we're having an entire generation dosing themselves of nicotine at levels that we haven't seen before, because you can literally do it anywhere. And for the teachers in the room, you all are here to educate and teach. I can't imagine how you could control a classroom of a thing that is discrete and can be done with your back turned, and they don't even have to exhale. So realistically, education is becoming more and more difficult. We're not designed to monitor this type of thing. This is something that, for the parents here, great. Thanks for making it tonight. Have the conversations, start the conversations at home about this, because this is where this is going to stop. This is where we're going to be able to make a change about things like this, the misinformation. Let's see here, going backwards. Increased risk of cardiovascular disease, that's what we're talking about as far as increased blood pressure, increased heart rate, constricted arteries, stripping of the proteins of the protective lining, releasing stored fats, and that's just nicotine. However, the young people are like, don't worry, it's just nicotine. It's not like it's a carcinogen. carcinogens are, all in cigarettes. Yes, there are, over 97 known carcinogens in cigarette smoke that we can just ramble off. We haven't identified nicotine as a carcinogen yet. But what we do know is that it's a tumor enhancer. And a tumor enhancer is something that allows cancer to proliferate and grow. And so when we look at nicotine, and we look at how does it affect an individual who's using it, who's not using other carcinogens, what it does is it takes away the cell's ability to enter what's called apoptosis, or programmed cellular death. So we are all being exposed to environmental carcinogens pretty much every day. Our bodies have this ability to identify mutations in cells and DNA, and if there's a miscommunication there, we can go in, those cells can go in and fix it. Their lysomes. If they can't fix it, that cell knows that it shouldn't replicate or duplicate. Because if it does, it's going to carry on that mutation. So a cell enters apoptosis, or programmed cellular death, and it just blows up, just falls apart. Goes into self-destruct mode because it knows it cannot replicate. Nicotine takes away the cell's ability to do that. So if you have a mutation, if you have an alteration in your DNA sequencing, you lose the protective ability that is built into your cells by using nicotine. Doesn't cause cancer, but it allows cancer to accelerate. Also, there's something called epigenetics. I think I have a slide up here. Epigenetics. Anybody know what epigenetics is? Show hands. All right. Epigenetics is kind of, it tells your DNA and how to sequence. We all have the same DNA. We all have things that tell us we make a 3.5-pound brain, we make a nose, we make hands, we make toes. We all share that same DNA. Epigenetics is kind of software. It's kind of like the iOS in your iPhone, which instructs which parts of that DNA are turned on and are turned off. Nicotine interferes. I don't know what that is. Nicotine interferes with that. And all of a sudden, it turns on and off certain DNA features, proteins, and it can affect everything from male sperm to female eggs to cellular reproduction. And so when we're looking at nicotine, and being used as a satiation aid, we have a couple FDA-approved forms. We have patches, lozenges, gum. Those are FDA-approved because we have longitudinal double-blind studies on them. Medical community takes a pledge to do no harm. Risk-benefit. Does the benefit outweigh the risk? If the benefit outweighs the risk, then let's move forward after we have a discussion with the medical team. That is how medicine is supposed to be practiced. We know patches, gum, and lozenges pose a risk because they contain nicotine. But we know exactly what's in them. We know how they work. They're not smoked. They're transdermally absorbed or orally ingested. And we use them for 3 to 6 months with the goal of ceasing all nicotine use, which is the benefit. Now, you'll hear people compare nicotine use to sports or caffeine or other things. I talked about the tumor-enhancing effects as apoptosis is taken away. Nicotine also stimulates blood vessel growth. Wow. So there's actually research out there looking at nicotine for stroke patients and things like that. Again, short duration use, risk-benefit. The problem with nicotine use where you're addicted and you're redosing and redosing is that what do tumors feed off of? Oxygenated rich blood. So nicotine will actually grow those blood supplies deeper and more effectively supply tumors with exactly what they need to proliferate. So nicotine is not safe, it's not benign. Nicotine versus caffeine. This guy. James Monsies, okay, excuse me, I'm from Jersey, so sometimes I get cynical on my tone. I'm sure he's a very nice person, but he is the co-founder of Juul, and he's stated chemically, nicotine is very similar to caffeine, and coffee is one of the most widely traded products in the world. While people of all ages around the world enjoy coffee, nicotine has been heavily stigmatized. Because